Hopefully you can see us. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, I think, if I've got the tech right. I'm Nicola Telford. I'm CEO and founder at Views for Change and also the Impact Marketing Club. And I'm here today chatting to Mitchel White, MD at Reward Agency. And we're going to be talking all things e-commerce growth, ethical marketing, inclusivity in marketing, greenwashing, and we're just going to have a chat through for the next hour or so on a number of those topics. So, Mitchel, do you want to introduce yourself and say hello?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I am Mitchel. I am the MD at Reward Agency. So we're based in Manchester, a marketing agency that works with sustainable and ethical brands. We work across loads of different services, primarily with the mission of making conscious brands the first choice for consumers. So that's why we exist. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having a chat with Nicola and hopefully discussing some interesting topics.
I imagine we will. Let's start. Do you want to give us a bit of a sort of background story? How did you start Reward? And also, I want to hear about your book and all the other things you've been doing alongside it. So, just give us a bit of a background. Where did you start?
Yeah, sure. So I started freelancing when I was 18. So I started off doing logo designs, to be honest, on a site called People Per Hour. So I've probably done about 800 logos in 2 years, which is crazy amount of design work to be doing. And then we kind of grew into marketing. So we became a traditional marketing agency in 2014 with a small team again. In 2016, I kind of had some bad personal news and I was diagnosed with HIV, which was a big, huge sort of shock personally, business, everything, my whole life kind of changed. And that switch kind of made me reevaluate what was important. And that's when we became really focused on sustainability, on ethical marketing, on all of the things that we talk about today. And moving away from being a sort of traditional marketing agency who works with everybody, doesn't really care about impact. That's where we made the switch. So since then, we've been growing. We have now got an office based in Salford, just outside of the city centre in Manchester, which is quite nice. And we're growing, which is nice.
Great. And so on your journey to being a sustainable agency or ethical agency or whatever words you want to use, there's lots of buzzwords in this space, you decided to become a B Corp. Do you think that becoming a B Corp was the most important part of showcasing your ethical credentials? Like, why did you decide to do that?
For different reasons. So I think the first was to have that credibility because of the process that you have to go through to become a B Corp, the certification in itself and the weight that it has, but also to be part of a community. We are a small agency, and I think if you can learn from peers, if you can learn from people who might not necessarily be in your space or area location, I think B Corp was great for that because it has such a global reach. It was for learning, to be honest. So yeah, lots of different reasons, but it's been definitely worthwhile. The process, I don't know if anyone else has been through it. I know that you're going through it, Nicola.
Yeah.
It's a long process of questions, but it's really, really helpful because there's not many other assessments which look at the level of detail across so many different areas, obviously community, environment, your customers, employees, whatever it might be. There's so many different impact areas that you can assess and look at. I think it was really helpful just in identifying where we're at and where we needed to improve as well.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we obviously did the BIA for the pending status because we were too early to do the full accreditation. And it was, I mean, just doing that is difficult, let alone providing all the evidence and all the other stuff that you have to do when you're actually doing that. So we're working through that now. And it is, I mean, it's important that it's rigorous because I think it's, otherwise it doesn't carry the same credibility and status that it should. So yeah, and you have to recertify every year, right?
Yeah, so you recertify every 3 years, and you're annual fee is each year.
Impact report.
They've just announced some new standards. Actually, I've not had a chance to read them in full, but I think it was yesterday I got an email. So they've been reviewing the standards since 2020 in the wake of some things that happened with Brewdog and whatnot. They've been reviewing it, and they've now come up with some new standards of policies as well. So I think that's going to be helpful. As I say, I've not had a look just yet, but I would imagine that they're even more rigorous and important.
Nice. Great. I was actually going to say something else then, but I feel like I should keep my mouth shut on that one. So, right, let's talk about e-commerce. You work with e-commerce brands mostly. Do you find there's a conflict between e-commerce growth, marketing, and ethics and sustainability? I mean, that's like the biggest question, but like...
it's a tricky one because e-commerce is inherently unsustainable. If you think of the logistics, the last mile logistics, the whole supply chain that supports the industry, it is perhaps not the most sustainable sector, if you like. But I do think that it's possible to be as sustainable as you can be within the space. I think consumers like shopping, obviously, and some purchases are necessary, say, for example, health, well-being, whatever it might be. And I think that the alternative, if we didn't support sustainable brands, would be non-sustainable brands taking market share and really growing. So I think we at Reward believe that it's important for the conscious choice to be the first choice. So if that means that we're in the e-commerce space doing marketing, then that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I feel like we had this when we first started Views for Change. We had this sort of grappling issue where we talked a lot about the fact that actually fundamentally the system is pretty fucked, to be honest. But the problem is like trying to take the system down as like a small group of people, and everyone's got a different idea about how to take the system or change the system. That's not what we can do right now. And what we can do right now is try to implement the best formats of what we can do, and like you said, bring ethical brands to the top and give them a fighting chance of you know, like creating market share. And the same for us. It's like paid social is not going away anytime soon. How can we make it better and make it have a positive impact that's not just you know, money going to Facebook?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hard thing to grapple with, I think. I have certainly had sort of sleepless nights over it.
Definitely. We've debated whether we should even be investing in Facebook and Instagram as a platform. I think we've had a conversation about this before.
Yeah, we have.
And it's which is worse? Is it worse putting the right brands in front of people that can have a more positive impact, or just removing ourselves from there and then letting it kind of run itself with the non-ethical brands? And I think it's that, like you say, it's the steps towards, and sustainability, like everyone knows, is a journey. It's not going to happen straight away. I think those small steps do add up to bigger change, and I think the more people that do change their behaviours and more brands that change their behaviours, it can have a bit more of a snowball effect and put pressure on platforms and pressure on governments, pressure on whoever it might be to make those systemic changes that need to happen.
Yeah, I think you've also provided me with a great segue there into the sort of space of greenwash, which is in the title of this stream. And I'm thinking, purely because I'm thinking there's a really recent example that a lot of people are talking about at the moment, which is Kourtney Kardashian Barker and Boohoo, and framing their campaign around them partnering with Kourtney to learn about sustainability, which is like freaking genius in some ways, because it's so like, it's hard to argue with that, like, oh, we're going to use this as an opportunity to teach and learn and all that sort of stuff, but actually fundamentally their business model is exploitative. Yeah, I'm interested to know your thoughts on greenwash, especially in e-commerce, and I mean with the bigger brands, but also with the smaller brands, because it's really easy to get sort of sucked into these things quite quickly.
Yeah, just don't get me started on Boohoo. I'm definitely not a fan, even though, so in Manchester, they're kind of lauded as a very big success story from the north, which is
Right.
great, but in terms of the negative impact that they have on people, on landfill, on planet, everything is appalling, to be honest. But yeah, let's not carry on about that.
Okay.
I just think it's really, e-commerce is so easy to be transparent in, and I think that it's probably the easiest sector to be transparent in, because you can look at your supply chain, you can look at your raw materials, you can look at the logistics, you can look at the CO2 produced across all of those, you can look at the wage paid to factory workers. It's all of the tools are there to be non-greenwash, and I think that it's easy to fall into the grasps of it, because I think the people want to use buzzwords, people want to use what's popular, people want to use what they think other big brands are using. But I think I don't know, I just think people need to take a step back and get back to basics sometimes with it,
Yeah.
and
Do you
not
think,
try.
sorry.
So carry on.
No, do you think the reason why greenwash is so prominent in e-commerce and retail and areas like that is because they have the tools to be really transparent? So they require, like, because like people can see like bad practices, they can see that stuff and they can find that out, and there's receipts for that. Do you think that's why greenwash is so prevalent in this space, because they need to find ways to sort of hide that?
I think that's probably true. Yeah, I think it's kind of a cloak and dagger, try and disguise away from the facts, which isn't great, obviously. But I think that it is changing, and I do think that the pressure that consumers are putting on the brands will eventually make a change. But yeah, I don't know. There's so many good examples though of people that aren't doing greenwashing, but again, that's probably because they do have a great supply chain, they do have fair pay. So where's the line?
Yeah, and it is really difficult, not to like excuse it, but it is really difficult for someone like Boohoo, any fast fashion brand. Let's just sort of assume that that's who we're talking about. Their business model is predicated on cheap materials, cheap labor, cheap everything, because their end consumers want cheap products. And actually, if they were to do, you know, the work and build supply chains that were fair and equitable and not exploitative, and also, like, you know, not carbon intensive and all those sorts of things, that's going to cost them more, which means their consumers are going to be charged more, which means that they're not going to buy it. So I don't know how that, like, I don't know how the end of that story, but I think it is coming soon. I think consumers are going to, you know, push away from that, especially with the rise of like circular fashion and like, you know, buying secondhand and things like that. It's going to be interesting to see whether that plays a part in the end, because I actually saw Pretty Little Thing, lol, they have launched a marketplace, and like these sorts of brands are starting to, like, again, it's like let's just add on something to make it, you know, better, that our core business model is bad, or, you know, bad in the grand scheme of things, but they're seeing that these like consumers are wanting these things, and they're looking at how they can implement these things themselves.
I think they see it from another revenue stream as well, because obviously it's like a marketplace. If you're charging fees for people listing whatever it might be, it's another revenue stream. And I think the worry for brands like this is that if they don't provide the cheap clothes that some of their consumers, and well, if we're honest, there's a big population in the UK especially that does want cheap fast fashion, and I think their minds are probably of, well, if we don't do it, then somebody else will. So perhaps that's their reasoning. I think the issue is if brands like that are trying to say that they're sustainable, I think you should own the fact that if you want to be who you are, and you aren't sustainable, be honest about that, but talk about what perhaps you might be doing in the future to improve that, rather than just trying to mask the whole business model. And yeah, I just think there's a
or slap on a conscious collection, which isn't that great, but
yeah, I just think just call a spade and just be honest about where you're at, and if you do want to change, then make tangible steps towards that, but just don't go around saying that you are currently sustainable when you're not. It's just not okay.
Yeah, agreed. Do you think transparency is the antidote to, well, do you think transparency is the antidote to greenwash? I mean, that sounds like a stupid question because I feel like the answer is yes, but you can answer it.
I think so. And I think transparency can kind of get confused with ambiguity as well. So I think that you can be vague whilst being transparent, and I think you need to be both. I think you need to be transparent and unambiguous so that people know exactly what you're saying. There's no question in someone's mind that this is true and this is how it is, and it can't be interpreted in a different way, because people use different, like eco-friendly, obviously buzzword is used, but what does that actually mean? Eco-friendly could be, it could be the materials, the packaging, it could be whatever it might be. But I think that people hide behind those words and deliberately use them sometimes to be vague. So I think it's important to be transparent, but also to not be vague as well.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with a friend of mine about compostable as a word, because people think compostable means, oh, it's like biodegradable, or like I can put it in the compost at home and it will compost. But what it actually means in this particular instance is it needs to be like industrially composted, which is not a process that we have access to like easily. So yeah, I completely agree, and I think there's a place as well for governments or authorities to have clarity around what these words mean, and have like a glossary for people to be really clear about what we've got a comment, so I've just been completely distracted. Hi Daniel. About what those things mean, so that we can we as consumers have that education and have that clarity from brand to brand to brand. That's what
100%.
Let me read what Daniel said. I'm less optimistic that buying habits are changing. There's a huge section of the public that are thinking this way, and it is I think I can overlay this on here. No, maybe not. Sorry everyone. There's a huge section of the public that are thinking this way, and it is making these big brands take notice, but there are too many low-income families, and even more to come with the current state of the economy, that in spite of their values, fast, cheap fashion carries more importance to them. I actually largely agree with that, and I thought about raising that earlier. Like the idea that people actually can't afford sustainable options. I don't think that should be put on consumers. I think I agree that they can't, but I wonder what the solution is to that. And I don't think it lies with the consumers making more money. I think it should be finding ways to subsidize, or I don't know.
I think it's about the marketing tactics and sales tactics as well, of flash sales, that kind of scarcity that they like to play on with new drops. I think people need clothes, obviously, and affordable clothing is important to the whole of society. And obviously, as Daniel says, that it's going to be even worse, obviously, through the winter with cost of living crisis at the moment. I think the conscious consumption is probably what they should be pushing, rather than trying to push new drops, new sales, buy one get one free, whatever it might be. Still, if you're going to offer the cheap fashion that you do at the affordable price, do that at a lower volume than perhaps at the moment, because I think you can still consume those, but at a less volume.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've just finished writing an article on, like, is there possibly any sort of ethical approach to Black Friday? And one of the things I sort of talked about in that is about like using it as an opportunity to talk about consumption, overconsumption, and not using this as a tool to essentially dupe consumers into feeling like they need to buy something now, and this is my only chance, I'm going to get it at this price, and feeling like I feel it sometimes, and I like to think of myself as a fairly conscious shopper, but sometimes you get bombarded with ads anyway, and you do feel sometimes like you're really left out, and it takes more energy to stop yourself and say, no, this doesn't align with my values, or this doesn't, or even just come up with what you feel in the first place, and step away from that model, because you can't really avoid it.
No, I think, there's to be honest, we probably shoot ourselves in the foot, but there's so much you could do in the marketing industry to reduce it. You could maybe add a frequency cap to the number of emails that brands could send each day, because I don't know if I've unsubscribed from literally every brand I've ever bought from, apart from one I love. But if you get 5, 6, 7 of those each day, and your impulse control, obviously, as you get tired, you've been at work, you've done all of your chores, you get to the end of the day, and then that last one is saying 2 for 1 on X, whatever it might be, you might not necessarily start a day of purchased it, but you do at the end of the day. I think it's like constant bombardment and constant sort of infiltration of the brain from all the different brands that amplifies the issue, I think.
And I think we as people, even the most critical thinkers amongst us, really don't know ourselves how much influence these things are having, and that's on just generally on like our mental health, but also on how we're purchasing. And I sometimes I challenge myself. I also try to challenge my peers when someone's buying something, like try and track back the story of when you decided you wanted to buy that. And I know people say these sorts of things like, oh, you should check yourself. Like, if I want to buy something, give yourself a day, then give yourself 2 days, or whatever it is. There's a diagram somewhere that's like, you don't actually want it by the end. But I try and do it backwards and be like, when did I actually start wanting this? And normally it will be from somewhere like I've seen an ad, or one of my friends has mentioned it, and then I started getting advertised it because I looked it up, and it's actually really interesting to see how much you're being influenced without even knowing that you are, until you take a conscious decision to track that, which is quite scary. I've gone completely off topic. I don't know. Do you want to say anything else on that? And then
you've said what I was thinking, so that's all good.
Okay, amazing. I want to ask you, as an agency owner, and one with core values and B Corp and all of those sorts of things, have you ever faced any situations where you've had to say no to a potential client, and you don't have to name names or anything, but potential client or campaign or approach to something that they want because it doesn't align with your values?
Yes. We don't tend, so in terms of no clients, if you like, that would come to us, we make it really clear who we do and don't work with. So I think we do filter out a lot of potentially some of the people that wouldn't be doing things for the right reason, or would ask us to do things that we weren't comfortable with. But we do occasionally get people that come to us with a product, say for example in the beauty or well-being space. I think one example, I don't know if you've heard of finasteride. It's a male hair growth supplement. There's some brands called Suns and a few other ones. You can get in a spray or tablet form, but it's been linked to increases in thoughts of suicide and depression and anxiety in men. And there's not huge amounts of research, but if there is even the tiniest link between a product and increased thoughts of suicide, especially in men, because it's such a prevalent issue anyway with mental health, it's just a big no for us. So we said no to them, and the response was strange, to be honest. The person was kind of a bit combative and questioning the research and questioning why we wouldn't take it on. And I think it's just sticking by those principles and making sure that you're not doing anything that would jar with, I think, one, reputationally, but two, also, like, I lie awake at night thinking about fracking and all sorts of random things. So that would have been on my mind for months and months, and just wouldn't have sat well with me
Yeah.
or the team.
Yeah, and I think it's a slippery slope, right? You compromise your values just, you know, in the short term, and then it just will unravel everything. I haven't heard of them, but I also wonder when people get combative and get sort of like funny about things, it's generally a sort of projection of their own concerns. So I mean, I can't comment on their behalf, and this is just like an observation that I see with other people when they're angry about something or they're defensive. Normally, it's because you're telling them a truth they don't want to hear, which hurts. And like I've been there, you don't want to hear it,
Not
but
today.
not like not today, please. Especially when people are saying no to you, you know, no because we don't work with this, and it is tricky to a lot. And also, I think what's hard as well for a lot of people is, you know, people set values at the beginning of their journey as a business owner or service provider or whatever. Some people don't, but most people do. And remembering them and living them and breathing them and doing them is a different story. So you have to like, it's the actions, it's not the words on a page that say our, you know, our values are X, Y, Z.
And I think by living them daily, that's how they become embedded, because you can create them at the start and you can tell the team and your partners, whoever it might be, that you have these values, but by actually doing something that delivers on them or showcases that they're actually true, that's how they become ingrained. And I think you do need that leadership there to kind of be not the guiding light. I don't want to sound like Mother Teresa. The kind of like
I don't know, she's been cancelled, hasn't she?
Oh well, let's not get started on
okay.
I think everyone gets cancelled these days. We're probably going to after this anyway, so don't worry, we'll be
well, we can talk about cancel culture if you want, a little bit, just a little bit.
I just you can't really say anything without fear of upsetting someone, and like obviously I've been slating Boohoo, and I'm sure there'll be lots of I don't know if anyone from Boohoo's watching, probably not, because we're talking about sustainability, but potentially cease and desist letter later. But I don't know, I think that there's a trouble now that healthy debate and like extreme views 100% do not express, and perhaps keep them to yourself and try and reevaluate them. But I think healthy debate, especially around sustainability, is really important. And I think if we just cancel people and we put people down and make comment without trying to understand their point of view, I think that's a really difficult place to be. And I think that a lot of societal issues come from that. And so I think it just needs to be looked at again.
No, I agree. And I think the way we communicate with one another forces ourselves, and we can see this in like the way we do our politics, the way our the way tech and media is operating. It pushes you one way or the other, and I think there's always a level of nuance that is missed, or we don't have time for it, because the news cycles and everything moves so quickly that like by the time someone's, you know, messed up or done something wrong or said something they shouldn't have, or, you know, like, and sometimes even completely unintentionally, they're dead in the water before you know, within 10 minutes, because we're on to the next thing, because we haven't had a chance to actually think about it. And interestingly, on that topic, you mentioned right at the beginning about Brewdog, and I was literally just before this reading James Watt's post. He's like, there's been a development in a court case about him being trolled. And I was thinking to myself, like, I mean, there's so much there to talk about. I don't know, James. I don't know, like, I don't have enough information to be able to comment on it. But I was just thinking to myself earlier, like, there's so much to every story that, like, even though B Corp are now deciding what the new framework looks like, with those sorts of learnings, it's not necessarily like for or against anyone. You know, it's like nothing is trying out to get anyone. Everyone's trying to get better, and we just need to build spaces to do that.
Yeah, I was quite vocal at the time when the whole B Corp Brewdog thing emerged, and I think because of some of the allegations around sexual misconduct, and I think that zero tolerance to anything like that, and I think that he should have been. I think B Corp should have acted a lot more quickly because of that allegation, and I think that the cultural issues that have been brought up since with bullying, and I think those need to be interrogated. But I think for victims of sexual violence and assault, I think it's really important that there is a zero tolerance. And until that's been either proven to
dealt with,
not true or dealt with, I think just zero tolerance to it. But
I agree, by the way.
I don't know, like the Brewdog B Corp, I think just the reputational damage that it did at the time to the B Corp brand was quite huge because they weren't acting. And obviously there's all sorts of legal issues, as you've now said, obviously about the trolling and court cases and whatnot, corporations. But I think as a small business, it's kind of frustrating sometimes to see big business and big organizations being so slow to react, because we can move so quickly and can react and change. I think it's quite frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, it is, and I find the whole thing like a complete head fuck, frankly, because I can't in the split second that you read something about something, there's like 50 different things you have to think about in that scenario. Like, so, you know, in this scenario, and I feel like I don't know enough about this to actually like make a comment, but like you've got, like you said, you've got sexual misconduct allegations, you've got cultural issues, you've got like a leader who's been sort of presenting themselves as a strong leader and a sort of thought leader and have a strong personal brand being, you know, tarnished, and people grappling with the fact that they've trusted this person and it's been inspired by them and all those sorts of things. And then you've got the fact that then a lot of people troll people around it, whichever angle you want to go at. Maybe it's at him, at the other people, at whoever. And I'm like, like, you know, like there's certain things that obviously have like a really strong hard stop on them. And it's a case of like, okay, we'll deal with this like until it's dealt with or it's been proved either way, like it's been investigated, then that's like something that we need to do. But in the meantime, like the way things can go and the sort of court of public opinion and all those sorts of things is then really difficult because it muddies everything so much, and it creates a storyline that some people can never come back from, and that means, you know, for like B Corp, for example, them having, and this is I presume a lot of the part of B Corp is that you have governance around what you will accept and what you won't, and that could come from an ethical perspective, people perspective, you know, green environment perspective. Where do you, like, basically you need to decide where you stand, and then it's easier to apply those things to a situation when you're faced with it.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that's what the framework, the new one that they've come up with, does address, because I think that was where the confusion was, is how do we act in the situation and what do we do, because we've never experienced this before. It's quite a relatively new organisation, really, in the grand scheme of these things. So I think hopefully they have addressed it in that. But I think it's this, like you've said before as well, it's black and white thinking, isn't it, of right or wrong and Tinder left or right. It's like, well, actually they're okay, like
maybe they just got shit photos.
Who knows, like it's just so black and white, and there's a lot of grey in most things, so
absolutely. And I think the whole conversation around ethics, sustainability, greenwash, marketing, that is why there's a space for greenwash, because you have like people being pushed either way and you can't get it right because there's always nuance and there's always an individual approach to how things are done. That's just the way the world works. No two things are exactly the same or comparable.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about. You talked on LinkedIn during Pride Month about some of the issues that need to be addressed. So I'm going to quote you here. You said you're looking at how I can learn more about gender inclusive language, how to contribute to the fight for trans rights, and how to make Reward an even more diverse, safe space for everyone. Would you like to share a bit about what you've learned since then and how we can sort of all do that?
Yeah, I think the biggest personal learning is how much of my language is ingrained from other people or what I've heard elsewhere. It's so, for example, I use the word guys a lot, so I'd say, how you guys, and it's not a gender neutral term. It could be offensive to people who have a different gender identity to they were assigned at birth, whatever it might be. I've noticed a lot of words, and even just beyond gender language, just words that I say that filler words, for example. You've probably heard lots of them on this call, to be honest, but it's made me aware of how I speak and the words that I use a little bit more, and how they might be interpreted by other people. And I try and correct myself now. So I think I've said guys maybe once in the last couple of months since I started to correct myself, and I don't know, it just takes a lot to look at yourself and perhaps change the way that you behave and speak, because well, I've been here for 29 years and 29 years of ingrained language. It's hard to change, but I think it's important that we do and that we move with the way that respects other people, and that we can, just adjust. As well, we followed the trans rights debate that was happening in Parliament quite closely. We posted a fair bit on social about it to raise awareness as well, of the lack of rights that trans people have, and even within the LGBT community, how trans people can be supported a lot more. So it's been a huge learning curve for me, to be honest, because I was aware of the struggles that trans people had within our community and wider, but not to the level of extent of how law isn't in favour, how language can affect the well-being of people as well. So yeah, it's been a big curve.
How do you feel like those learnings impact how do you bring that into your work as well?
I think it's being aware of language of other people as well. So if you notice that particular words or particular things are being said, then not shaming people obviously in front of everyone, but if someone's been made to feel uncomfortable, addressing that and making sure that you're using the right language. I think something it's a bit of a strange mix at Reward, because we're over 50% LGBT community employee anyway. I think it's almost the other way, that we need to be aware of some of the terms that we might use for heterosexual people within the team, and how we need to make sure that they're represented as well. So it's kind of a weird,
that's really interesting,
flip of the usual workplace, but I've just been more aware of that as well, and how to make sure that everybody feels comfortable, no matter sexual orientation or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And does it come into your like copywriting and the way you do, work with like literally the sort of execution and activation of work? Do you sort of have those sort of checks and measures in place as well?
Yeah, so we updated after that Pride Month. We updated all of our policy documents with gender neutral language, all of our employee handbooks, everything. But with clients now as well, whenever we refer to then we'll start working, we'll ask pronouns, and we will make sure that we're using the correct pronoun, but also trying to make language as gender neutral with products, descriptions, copy, whatever it might be, trying not to fall into old habits, and make sure that we're following through on the promises that we've made.
What do you think, and this might be a sideways question, but what do you think about brands? I'm thinking about a lot of brands that I get advertised, that their whole sort of brand and tone of voice and language is gendered, like the Hi Babes or the like you go girls kind of vibes. You can tell what I'm getting advertised now.
What have you been looking at?
Stuck in some system. But like, and also like how? Okay, so actually, let me reframe this question. How do you so like marketing 101 is target audience, right? And talking to your audience. How do you navigate the two of those sort of things?
It's that's a hard one because there's so many different nuances again with the tone of voice, language, different audiences. I think it's being in tune with the way that your audience speak, and I don't know that many people that say hi babes, and I don't know, like, it's a bit of a cliche. I don't necessarily know that the audience that they're targeting would be using that language anyway. I think it's probably come from a white middle-aged man that thinks that that group of people perhaps talks in that way.
No, I think interestingly, it actually doesn't. Like a lot of brands that target like millennial and Gen Z women are very, very like that's sort of like girl gang sort of language, and it's sort of like making you feel part of that, I guess. There must be a term for it. There probably is. And I can understand why they're doing that, because I think women in general feel like there's sort of, you know, they're not cis het white men. So there's like, you know, they're not quite as privileged as them. So they've got to have this gang together. And then there's like, you know, all these other things. So I can understand in a way why they're using really specific language for that group of people. But there is this point around like, well, then you're cutting out other groups, and that could even include the cis het white men. But an inclusive language, I don't know. I actually haven't thought about this a huge amount until right now. The sort of conflict between marketing and being able to say, you know, being able to truly be an inclusive space.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have said what I've just said, so apologies if I've offended anyone. It's a hard question to answer, to be honest. I think that it's important that we do use inclusive language, and I think, but then you do need to make everyone feel included, obviously, target market included. Yeah. I don't know, it's a really hard one. Yeah. I don't know.
I feel like this is a question we need to explore more, because I didn't prepare for this to come up as part of the conversation necessarily, but I feel like we've landed on something that like does feel like a conflict to me. And yeah, let's take it back to the club and see what people think. I don't know if are you reading stuff?
Yeah, so Kaylee has just said, I think the way forward on degendering brand personalities, celebrating other and ultimately more important parts of their audience's identity. And that's a great, I
really like that.
That's basically spoken for us both. So thank you, because it's important.
I think we were getting ourselves in a bit of a tizzy there. We could have said some stuff that wasn't like appropriate or even what we necessarily think.
It's so sorry.
No, I actually, I mean, I didn't recognize anything in what you said that was awful, but I probably said stuff as well without seeing it. So apologies if there's been any offense. We're going to do some more thinking on this before we, decide what we think and learn. Okay, right. We've got a couple of maybe like 10 minutes left. So being actually, this is kind of the same question. I'm just looking at my questions or other stuff I want to talk about. One of the things that I've always struggled with, and I think a lot of this is actually often used as a tool to, make things more difficult for progress. But taking an intersectional approach to ethical work or e-commerce or business, sustainable business, and good brands, everything from the planet, people, all of the sort of different things that we talk about, they all intersect. And it kind of means, it feels like, as a brand, often you can't really like win, because you can't get it all right. Or I mean, in an ideal world you can, but I don't think you can. And I'm curious from your perspective, like, what do you think drives people forward to carry on trying to do that as a and sort of be a business as a force for good when you know you're not going to be able to ever reach that?
Being an entrepreneur, I think you have some sort of mental health condition anyway, because it's a strange business to go into. But I think people that do good have it ingrained, and I think it's part of who they are and the fabric of their being. So I think it's hard to stop that, and I think to keep pushing forward is just built in within a lot of people that do want to change and do good. It might be from past experience that they've experienced something that has changed their views, or they see injustice in the area that they work in, or they see something that really frustrates them and they want to make change. So I think having that that purpose and that drive does really keep you going through what happens. I don't know. I also think that it's up to us to make the change, because I think it's easy to just think that someone else is going to fix it, and government will change and society will change. But I think business especially has a really important part to play in driving cultural change and driving societal change. So I think it's a responsibility as well as a goal. I think myself personally, I see it as a responsibility to do what I can to make as much of a change as I can in marketing, in for the environment, with the products that we work with. But I don't know if that's the same for you, Nicola, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, I think I find it never feels like enough. And I don't think it's ever going to feel like enough. And I think you're right. Like, once you're on the path of like having values, or having like a framework for what you see as doing the right thing, and it's not just about making money, and you understand that money is a tool to do better. I think you can't get back on that, because you just like won't be able to live with yourself. But also you then are on this perpetual journey that's like, I'm never going to get to this place, like, and I'm certainly not going to do it on my own. And that sometimes drags me right down, because I'm like, oh my god, what's the point if I can't get all of this, like, if I can't see, if my vision of the future is not going to become a reality, is getting halfway there enough? And then I compromise my own well-being at times for this sort of greater good, utilitarian sort of view of the world, and then I can't do as much as well, because I'm burnt out or whatever. So yeah, I don't know.
100% the same. Like, I feel delusional sometimes that I feel like what I want to achieve is possible, and why like, is it ever going to happen, like you just said? And I think it's hard when you see people in the same industry and same space doing well that aren't focusing on doing it the right way, value, sustainability, ethics wise, and you think, well, what are they doing that we're not? Or what I don't know, that comparison piece comes in, and the imposter syndrome, all of the syndromes, and you start to wonder whether you can do it, and you start to lack the confidence and ability. But I think you just have to pick yourself up again and remember why you're doing it, and remember that frustration, or remember that problem, or whatever it was in the first place that started you going, and start to focus on that again.
Yeah, I think you're so right. And I think recognizing that you as an individual, is like royal you, is not, you're not going to do all of this on your own, and like, you not being able to reach this like delusional view of the future world is not failure, because just by working on it every day, it's like progress. And even if you just talk to one person that day, and something stuck with them that you said that was about taking a slightly different approach to marketing or something, then that is progress. So I mean, it's the little wins. I mean, I'm the same though. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm completely delusional on a daily basis, and I go from Like I go from like completely like I've messed this whole thing up. I'm never going to make any change. Nothing's happened. No progress. I'm not good enough. Da, 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 da. To about 2 minutes later, being like, oh my gosh, I'm going to change the world. And I'm like, how I can't even keep up with myself. And it's like, I need to like go in the middle waves instead of like these ones, because it's just quite a lot.
I'm glad it's not just me. I come in from work sometimes and my other half, I honestly don't know how he puts up with it. I think he must think, what's going to come in today? Is it going to be,
Yeah.
I'm taking on the world, or is it, I can't do this anymore, it's so hard?
Yeah. And it can be multiple times in a day, right?
Well, multiple times an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. So, I mean, I suppose if there's any people watching this that are running like or doing anything, to be honest, that is like trying to be a change maker, I feel like that's it's important to say that we're all struggling. And we all are here to talk to each other. So yeah, oh, at least I am, and I'm sure Mitchell is too, to have a chat. It is a lot. It is a lot. Founders, I think anyone that's any change maker, or like that sounds so naff, doesn't it? But like any person that's trying to do something that's not just coasting or doing their oh, that was so judgmental of me. I apologize, everyone. Anyone trying to have like live their purpose, whether that's in a job or freelancing or running their own company, or anyone that's trying to make change, probably has the exact same roller coaster. So it is worth it, but it's not worth it to compromise your mental health.
No, well, yeah, there's definitely a balance to be had, but I think it goes back to that things being ingrained as well, because we're taught at school to fit in, we're taught at school to be quiet, and we're kind of pushing against the grain of what has been done. So it kind of goes against everything we've ever been taught and taught to believe, that we should fit in and we should do things as they should be done. And so I think even that, from a mental health point of view, is really, really difficult to know that you are not moving in the same direction as the traffic, and you're kind of dodging all of these random things that are coming towards you.
Yeah, you're so right. I think that a lot, actually, that I feel alien to a lot of people in terms of what I'm trying to do. And I actually feel that as well, especially when you're, if you speak to people that are in your space, there's obviously a level of understanding of what you do that people can understand. But when I'm talking to some of my like closest friends who are in completely different industries, do completely different things, I feel like I actually just don't, I have no identity because I'm like, I can't explain to you how this feels in a way. And they probably could, same for me, I don't understand their space, but like, there's just a disconnect of feeling that you're disconnected because you feel like you're doing this thing that's so far out of the scope of what everyone else is doing. And yeah, fundamentally, we don't like not fitting in, right? It's not great.
It's not.
Belonging. What's everyone saying in the comments? Okay, we'll probably what time is it? We've got like 7 minutes. So Daniel, we need more tools to make being a change maker easier. We need founders to focus on this area for reasons of mental health, community, and genuinely lasting change. I agree. Do you have any ideas for tools, Daniel or Mitchell?
I don't.
I'm interested to know what tools we're thinking here. Are we thinking like how productivity wise, in terms of like supporting the journey of being a change maker? Because I think arguably founders in general, even if they're in like fintech or in like edtech or whatever it is, they're still change makers in their respective spaces. It doesn't necessarily mean impact change, but perhaps tools like supporting, getting like managing your governance around policies and how you implement that sort of stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a lag on this, so maybe Daniel will message in a second.
Yeah, I think you need to blow your own trumpet. Impact Marketing Club is a good tool to talk to people, to find events, to find information. And I think even just talking now, Nicola, like I feel better talking to you, knowing that I'm not the only person that's going through it. But it's the same thing with the Slack channel, is that you can talk about similar challenges. You can talk to people about how they're feeling. So I think it's a really good tool.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think community is like one of the things that we, especially since COVID and everything like that, that we've really struggled with. And I actually think sometimes, like, the Impact Marketing Club is on Slack, which is a tool that we all use for internal, well, most people use for internal comms, so it's just sort of an extension of that. But there is something to be said for talking. And we still don't do it enough. Tilly is our community manager at the club, or she's just rejoined us, which is so great. And we were talking earlier about whether we need to start doing some sort of like just short informal meetups, because it's one thing, you know, posting on Slack and having chats and helping each other, but I can't tell you the amount of times I've posted on LinkedIn or something else with this great post about how amazing everything is, whilst literally like crying. And it's so easy to hide behind your keyboard on things, and there's so much interesting, like, rich conversation to be had and support to be had in like conversations.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a tool to have support and understanding from other people.
Definitely.
Here we go. Daniel Mead, tools that require little effort for people to make a good decision, from choosing where you shop to what online services people use. I would check out. Have you checked out Good Find?
Yes.
No, they're good. So I think there's quite a big rise of these types of spaces, like sort of marketplaces, or, you know, top places to shop that meet criteria.
If you're doing supermarket stuff as well, there's Impact Score on iOS that I use. It just literally scans the barcode and it tells you the ingredients, the supply chain information. So it's really cool.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and there's other ones like that I've seen in e-commerce coming out. Provenance is one, Compare Ethics is another. So you see them, you won't necessarily see that it's their brand, but you'll see on checkouts like what the supply chain looks like, and they've been validated by a third party. So I think it depends, Daniel, on the whether you're looking at like the founder tools or the consumer tools, and I think they're probably connected, but the tools that founders are creating for consumers, but the founders also need tools. If you know what I mean. It's just, everyone needs tools. We all need tools. Okay, right. So to wrap up, marketing tips for e-commerce brands that care.
Okay, so I think some of the biggest challenges at the moment across the whole industry is that acquisition costs are growing. So it's really difficult to get in front of the consumers that you want to. There's so much competition across sustainable, ethical brands at the moment in similar spaces. It's really hard to stand out. So I think collaborations and partnerships is probably one of the biggest areas that to focus on. So how can you perhaps partner with other brands in this space to maybe looking at marketplaces, like we've just mentioned, co-marketing opportunities, co-events. Obviously we're doing one now, but similar for e-commerce brands, looking at events as a driver of revenue. I think it's not how it used to be. So I think brands grew social media profiles, grew advertising campaigns a lot more quickly than you can now. And it's when the advertising industry first came about in the 70s, 80s, whenever it was easy to make your ad stand out. And I think it's similar now for brands in marketing. We're kind of facing that growing up of the industry where the quick wins, the quick fixes have happened, and now you kind of have to formulate and think a bit more than just random
There's
ads.
less low-hanging fruit now,
and I think that's a good thing, because the creative, the copy, the campaigns that will work will be the ones that have been thought about, and that's a good thing for the consumer because it means that it's better targeted, it's better messaging, it's more accurate. So I think it's a good time to be in marketing, it's a good time to be an e-commerce brand, but it is also more difficult. And I think discipline is really important for brands. I think that a lot of people don't give things enough time to work. So for example, with ads, it's important to test, and it's important to keep iterating and making sure that things are improving in performance. But you still need to give them time to breathe, and you still need to give them time to work. And I think it's easy to flip to the next thing and try this and try that, and that's great. But sometimes it does take a little bit of time for them to work. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, we all love like the instant gratification, right?
Yeah. Why is this not working? Well,
yeah, like
a day.
They turned it on this morning. It's funny. Tilly and I talk about this because I do this on our calls when we're talking about the community. We're like, we should do this, we should do that. Why isn't it working? Why isn't it working? It's like, because we literally spoke about it yesterday and we haven't done it yet. So just calm down.
I am that person. I'm like, to the team, why is it not working? But it's just because it's been one day.
Yeah. I'm so impatient though. I can't. Right, we're just about over an hour. Do you have anything else you want to say? I mean, we're going to do a thread in the Impact Marketing Club on Slack with a sort of Ask Me Anything follow-up. So we'll put some of these questions in there. We'll both sort of sit on there and have a bit of a convo. Yeah, if anyone's watching this that isn't part of the Impact Marketing Club, I will put a link on this stream so you can join. And yeah, I think that's probably all I need to say. Do you want to say anything?
I think maybe one last thing. I think just not to follow what everyone else is doing. I think it's easy, even within the sustainability space, to just do what everyone else is doing. So someone's talking about zero carbon, so that's what we need to do. And to talk about the sea because that's what someone else is talking about. But I think just stay in your own lane sometimes, and whatever economic, environmental, societal issues are important to you, I think push those and remain authentic to yourself. So try not to be caught up in what everyone else is doing and what everyone else is trying to be, and just push forward with your own agenda whilst doing good. Yeah,
I think you're right. And I think focusing on getting what matters to you right is better than trying to focus on everything and getting half of it wrong, or getting it half right, because maybe that's how we target moving forward, based on values rather than demographics that don't exist in the same way as they used to. So nice. Thank you so much. I think it's so weird because I can't see that anyone's watching. So I'm just sort of like, I feel like I actually have no idea if anyone was even watching that. But well, we'll see. And we'll chop this up and stuff. But I will click the end stream now and say a massive thank you to Mitchel. And we'll both comment on this thread so you've got our details. And I think this is on your channels as well anyway. So yeah, thanks so much. And I'll probably speak to you in about 5 minutes.
No, it's good to see you as well. Thanks for taking the time to invite me as well.
No worries.
Thanks, Nicola. Bye.